Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 177. How do I emerge from the doldrums? Another week and another great question. This time asked by my great business mate Paul. I think in future I'll be referring to June as the month of insightful questions. It started with him asking me how I was on one of our irregular but precious phone calls. We share a lot with each other and typically provide challenge, support and nudges in equal measure. Paul and I have known each other since the mid-1990s, so those of you who think introverts can't make friends or make phone calls, think again. It's actually pretty easy with the right people. Anyway, my response to his question was delicate. Now, if you've ever met me, delicate is not one of the words that might immediately spring to mind. I'm short, but not delicate of frame. But I've been feeling delicate for a while now. But I'm not feeling fragile. You know I love the meaning of words, so I decided to check out the difference. And delicate means easily damaged, so requires careful handling, whilst fragile means easily broken or destroyed. Yep, so delicate is spot on. I may bruise, but I don't break easily. As my conversation with Paul continued, I explained that I was okay with feeling delicate, as things aren't quite where I hoped they'd be just now. And life is full of ups and downs, and flourishing, after all, is relishing accomplishments through the peaks and valleys of life. So I'm in a valley right now, or if you prefer a nautical analogy, maybe it's like being in the doldrums, stuck without energy or momentum, somewhat powerless and maybe kind of drifting. Paul then asked me if I have a process for getting out of the valleys, and what I'm about to share with you is some of my process. I share in the hope that you may find your own process by hearing mine. So this may be a relatively short episode, but I promise it will still deliver value. Step 1. Acknowledge being in the valley or the doldrums. This is so important for me, as my intention is always to be as present as possible. You know I prefer to have a positive attitude, but that doesn't mean denying what's going on for me. This is about being truly still, so I can be as fully conscious as possible of the moment I'm experiencing. I can almost feel myself getting really acquainted with the tougher emotions that I don't experience all that often. It also means turning down or off the voice of my inner critic and any other internal dialogue. So this is a period of self-observation. Step 2. Stay still without judgment. I've realised that in the past I've attempted to claw my way out of the valleys as I don't find them pleasant places to be. These days I allow that stillness for as long as is needed without wallowing or playing victim or martyr. Being still gives me the opportunity to notice so much that would otherwise go by unnoticed. I want to experience it all. Step 3. Get curious. You'll have heard me say that purposeful curiosity is one of my business principles, and that's because my business principles are informed by my personal values. Curiosity here is wondering what got me here, the old cause and effect process. Then, what can I learn from being here? What are the gems, the nuggets of gold, the insights? I say often that learning is not a passive process, so I need to actively learn whilst I'm here. Sometimes there is real precious learning that frankly blows my mind, and sometimes it feels like a few breadcrumbs. But breadcrumbs have their purpose too.
Step 4, plan my route back to the peaks and build the vehicle. Potentially this could be 2 different steps, I guess, but for me they go hand in hand. Each valley is different, so the chances are the terrain I need to navigate next might require new methods, new techniques, and new vehicles. Flippers aren't of much use if I'm not in deep water, and skis probably won't help if the terrain is rocky. What is important here is that I don't scramble to get out quick smart, but I take my time so I don't slip back down the valley or get exhausted before reaching neutral ground. Step 5, get into action. Plans in and of themselves are of little use. As Dwight D. Eisenhower said, plans are nothing, planning is everything. Having a plan means I know how and where I have the ability to flex when the situation demands. So sometimes this is some spontaneous planning in the moment. It's also helpful for me to practice gratitude for each bit of progress I make. Some journeys back up to the neutral ground are longer, trickier, and more tiring than others, and they are all part of the cycle of flourishing. Step 6, reflect on the journey. Once I reach that neutral territory, I again allow myself some stillness so that I can embed the learning and recharge my batteries before planning for the next peak. Sometimes the next climb needs specific planning, and sometimes it takes care of itself, because what's always drawing me onwards is the flourishing introvert vision and the legacy I want to leave in people. Step 7, resource myself for the next part of the journey. This may include time with my accountability buddies, or a call, or even a visit with Paul. It might be that I need to do some research once I've had sight of the peak ahead of me. I might do some relapse prevention planning so I have strategies and tactics for when the things I know still catch me out crop up. It will almost certainly involve checking my commitment for the next phase of my journey, because whilst the view from the top of the peaks can be breathtaking, it takes effort to get there, and there can be some danger on the way up and once I've arrived at the peak. One thing I know, though, is that I'm energized by monitoring my progress and celebrating how far I've come. So there you have the essence of my process to head out of the valley or the doldrums. I'm curious now as to what your process or steps will be. There's no one perfect way to do this, so maybe just notice next time you're in the doldrums or the valley, and moment by moment capture your process as you make your way out. Or you could reflect on a recent tumble and note how you did get out. I found that being cognizant of my process means less worry or fretting about, what should I do now? I know what needs to happen next, as I'm an experienced traveller now, and I do love to travel. You see, the point of life is not to fear the valleys or try to avoid them, but to experience them to the full. As Izudon said, life is like a book. Some chapters are sad, some are happy, and some are exciting. But if you never turn the page, you will never know what the next chapter has in store for you. I've realised that it feels rather like my whole life's journey has had an upward trajectory, not in a negative, big-headed way, but in a growth and fulfilment way. But every now and then I'll stumble and lose my footing, or trip over something, or even go down a rabbit hole. But that's a whole different episode. And that happens because my eyes are rarely looking at my feet. My gaze is naturally level or upwards, and my tumble down to the bottom of the valley feels like free falling now. You see, I've given up flailing, grasping and grabbing as I fall, and have decided to keep myself safe as I tumble. It's like I've finally learnt how to fall, and that makes it far less painful. I did worry for a while that I might just be giving up, accepting my fate, when maybe I could have minimised my fall. But now I see it just as letting go, going with the flow, and then dealing with the consequences. Life is so much easier that way, and I'm all for not making life any harder than it has to be. Thank you, Paul, for your question, and I'll see you all on the mountain somewhere.
If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.